thank you so much once again for coming and sharing your film with us.
ありがとうございました。はい。
ありがとうございました。
Now to start things off, if you had to choose for the rest of your life to have Yazawa style or punk rock style, which would you choose? Asking both of you. That's okay.
矢沢さんってどんな感じですか？どんな感じで生きればいいんですか？ What kind of style would Yazawa style be? I wonder.
スーパースターですね。
He's a superstar, so.
スーパースターライブ。
So a superstar lifestyle.
So, Okita Atsuko, this film kind of takes a note from Carmen Comes Home, Japan's first color film, but it also shares many themes with some of your previous films, such as Woodsman in the Rain, as well as Ecotherapy Getaway Holiday, characters kind of going to a natural setting and discovering something about themselves. So I'm wondering, where the first germ of this story came from for you, whether it was from the original Carmen or from another place.
はい。まずかなり何年も前にプロデューサーの佐々木史郎さんという方とに僕が書いていった中編1時間ぐらいのシナリオだったんですけども、基本的には、死にゆくお父さんのために息子が奮闘するんだけど全く実らないっていうなんかその息子がただただ騒いでるだけっていう映画が面白いんじゃないかなと思ってそういうことをちょっとシナリオに書いたものをどんどん直して膨らませていったっていうところだったんですけど、はい。
So it all started with a screenplay that I wrote, which was quite short. It's about 1 hour that I showed to my producer, Shiro Sasaki. And the original idea was of a dying father and his son who really struggles to do some kind of good for his father, but just does not end up being very effective. So that was the germ of the idea, and I started reworking, and the idea expanded from there.
Excellent. Maeda-san? I'm wondering about the roles that you choose. You have a kind of star persona that many of your fans know you for, yet in many of your film roles you've chosen to play kind of against type in characters such as in Tomoko and Moratorium, as well as this most recent film. So I'm wondering what first drew you to the character of Yuka in Mohican Comes Home.
私はもともと沖田さんの一ファンとして映画がすごく好きで「キツツキと雨」が一番好きなんですけどだから監督と何度か作品じゃない機会でお会いする機会が何度かあったのでその時にいつも「好きです」「作品大好きです」っていうのを伝えていたんですけどで対談する機会があって映画の
そうですね、
はい、話をする機会があってでその時になんかこのユカっていう役がなんか前田さんっぽいっていうふうに言っていただけてだからもう呼んでいただけた時点でもう絶対にやりたいと思って
そうですね、よかったです
はい
So I was always one of the fans of Director Okita, and my favorite work of his is Woodsman in the Rain. And of course, we had a lot of opportunity to see each other outside of work, and I always told him how much I loved his work and admired him. And we also had an opportunity to do sort of a conversational style interview for a magazine, and that's when Director Okita told me that this character of Yuka reminded him of myself. And as long as there was an invitation from Director Okita, I most definitely wanted to do it.
Great. And I'm also curious about your working method on set for this film, because the film has such a unique tone. You're dealing with very serious questions of death and birth and passing on amongst generations within one family. But it's also an extremely hilarious film and a very funny film. So I'm wondering how you, as a director, as well as how you, as an actress, approach this kind of shift in themes. I'm especially thinking of the amazing scene where Masako Motai is sobbing while gutting a fish, and then your character of Yuka comes in, and it turns into a really funny scene, but it begins in this really sad place. So I'm wondering how you approach these kinds of scenes.
はい、まずそうですね、ストーリー自体がお父さんの看取りの話だったりもしているので、なんでしょう、ただこの息子が主人公なんで物語が全く暗くならないことは確かだなと思って、息子なりに頑張るんだけど、それはそれであんまりうまくいかないっていうか、逆にお父さんに気を使わせたり、逆に怒りを買ったり、なんかそういうところはやっぱりユーモラス、なかなかそこの辺のバランスっていうのは、キャラクターで持ってたところがあって、あとユカがやっぱりなんかやっぱりこのなんでしょうね、こういう病気になった時の家族の感じを少しなんかこう明るくしてくれる存在だったような気がして、特にその魚をさばくシーンも、本当に落ち込んでいきそうな家族のところでポッとユカのひどいアジのさばき方と餌と言われるアジのたたきをなんかそういうところでなんか少し救われるような気がするというか、そういう映画にしたいなというふうには思ってました。
So, in terms of the story, it's of course it's a story about a father who's in his deathbed, but at the same time, I think it saves the film from becoming too dark, because the son is the protagonist and he's the type of person that you saw in the film. So he does put on a lot of effort to do his best, but a lot of what he does ends up angering the father or putting him through unnecessary pain. So, and another thing is the character of Yuka. Of course, the family is facing the sickness of the father, but at the same time, I think her existence really brightens up the whole family. And the great example is that the fish gutting scene that you mentioned. It starts off quite sad, but it really, her horrible way of gutting the fish sort of makes it a lot more humorous. So she really saves that. She brightens up the scene.
And Maeda-san, I'm also wondering how you kind of approach that kind of duality of your role, as well as the duality of the film, and being a kind of comedy as well as being a kind of tragedy at the same time. I'm also thinking of the great moment of the discussion of the cancer diagnosis with shaking heads and not nodding heads, and how those kinds of performances are played.
そうですね、でも田村家の家族ではないので、ゆかはどっかこう客観的にいい意味でも客観的にこう見守ってられる位置かなと思いまして、だからそうですね、すごく空気の読める子だなと思うので、みんなに合わせつつもなんかでも田村家がやっぱりどこか上がれる部分がすごくある家族なので、そっちに合わせていこうかなって私的には考えて、その明るさをどうなんですか、もっと膨らますかというか、そっちの方に持っていければいいなっていうふうには考えていましたね。でももう家族がもともとこう いい絆で結ばれているので、その中にこう邪魔じゃない感じでこう入っていければいいなとは思ってましたね。
The family of Tamura, of course, they're a family, but Yuka is not. So I think, in a sense, she was able to have this very objective view of them. And at the same time, I think Yuka, as a character, is a young girl who is able to sort of read the atmosphere in the air. So she's able to read and go with the flow of this particular family. But at the same time, I also feel that this particular family, at their heart, is a very light-hearted people. So in approaching the role of Yuka, I think I wanted to expand on that lightness. And they have a great bond as a family, so I wanted to expand on that without getting in the way of this original bond that this family has.
Great. So I really love the film, and one of the many qualities I love about the film, aside from your performance and your direction, is the music. So I'm wondering if you, Okita-san, could comment on the involvement of Harmony Hosono to include the theme song for the film, as well as kind of the general concept for the soundtrack.
そうですね、僕もちょうど、YMO の大好きな世代でして、夢のようないつか本当になんか細野さんに音楽やってもらえたら嬉しいなと思って、大ファンだったんで、ちょっと冗談半分というか断られて当たり前ぐらいの感じで音楽をなんかこう雰囲気が合いそうだなと思ってダメ元でお願いしてみたらすごくいい返事をいただけたので、むしろ詩をなんか作詞をキーワードみたいな言葉を書いてくれって言われて、これは細野さんと共作になるなと思って、すごい夢のような体験だなと思って、緊張しながらそれを書いたりしました。そしたらいろんな歌詞にちょっと使ってくれたり、なんか自分なりにまた細野さんが詩をこう再構築してくれて、それでそれを歌う。ただなんかすごいファンなので自分のモヒカンって言ってるのが細野さんが歌ってるのがちょっと大丈夫なのかなってこっちが心配になるぐらいの感じでした。はい。
So of course I'm from the generation that loves and reveres YMO and Hosono-san, of course. So it was always my dream to work with him. So I'm just a huge fan of him. And almost as a joke, I approached him with this idea of him composing the theme song. And I completely assumed he would turn me down, but lo and behold, he gave me a very positive answer. And Hosono-san requested to me that why don't I come up with some key words for the lyrics of the song. So I couldn't believe it. It was sort of like a dream project. We were doing a collaborative piece with the great Hosono, so I was quite nervous doing that. But so I would submit key pieces of the lyrics, and he would edit or reorder them. So that's how the theme song came to be. But I was also very worried about making him use the word Mohican because he's such a great figure. So.
Oh, that's so great. So this is the final question I'll ask before opening it up to the audience. So we will have 2 microphones on either side of the stage. So start thinking about what questions you'd like to ask our guests. But before we do that, I just want to ask Maeda-san about your own cinephilia and your own film criticism, because I understand you had a column in the magazine Era in which you reviewed contemporary films as well as classic films. And I wonder if you could comment on just what kind of films you tend to gravitate towards and if it has an impact on your own acting style.
まだ映画を見るようになってからはまだ5年くらいなんですけど、その間に貪るようにいろんな種類の映画を見たんですけど、でもやっぱり一番好きなのはなんか楽しかったって終わる作品が好きですね。どっか内容が暗くても前向きなものがある作品がやっぱり一番好きだなって思いますね。大きい映画だったらアメコミとかも大好きですし、 でも沖田さんみたいなこう
大きい映画じゃないですか。
大きい映画ですからそうですね、それぐらい大きい映画も好きですし、はい、あとはもういろんな国のもうどの国の映画でも私はなんだろう、全然まだ知らないからこそどんどん見ていきたいなと思っていますね。そうですね、なんかはい映画は大好きです。
So it's actually only been 5 years since I started really watching films in earnest, and since that time I've had a voracious appetite for films. And I think the films that I love best is the one that allows me to think, wow, I had so much fun watching that film. And even if they have dark themes, if there's an element of positivity, I like those kind of films. And everything from big budget American comedies to, and this is when I said Director Okita's film, and Director Okita said, well, my films are pretty big too. But, so in essence, I love films of every country, and I'm still exploring all these different films, so and yeah, I just love film.
Okay, well, I think the audience has a lot in common there. And do we have any questions from the audience for either of our guests? If you do, just please raise your hand and we'll have a mic circulate to you from either side. I see a hand right here, up towards the middle.
No, I don't have a good question.
出られててすごい楽しかったんですけれども、主役のモヒカン役の松田龍平さんをキャスティングした経緯っていうか、どんな風に決められたのかなと個人的に伺いたいと思います。
So the question was about the casting of the film. Everybody was so well suited to the role, and I just wondered how the director chose the actor Ryuhei Matsuda for the starring role.
いつも台本を書いて、それからどういう人がやったら面白いかなというふうに考えるんですけども、松田龍平さんが出てる作品僕も好きで、結構見てて、松田さんが本当にこうなんでしょう、とにかく大きなものを必要としてないというか、本当になんかもうそれだけで成立してしまうような説明のなさというか。そういう独特の味のようなものがやっぱり何ていうんですかね、見ててこう虜になるというか、そういうので僕も松田龍平さんといつか作品ご一緒できたらなと思ってて、今回栄吉っていう役が本当に行動で示すというか、父親のそばにいてっていうことが本当に似合わなそうな人それがなんか本当にだからよりによってこいつかっていうなんか感じがすごいあって、それがすごく松田龍平さんがやってるのがすごい想像できてすごい面白かったので、もう本当にすぐにお願いしてっていう感じになりました。
When I usually write the script, I always consider who would be interesting to play the roles. And in terms of Ryuhei Matsuda, I love all of his film. And Mr. Matsuda, I believe, is an actor who he says a lot without saying much. And he doesn't need outlandish gestures or big explanations. So I like that a lot about him. And this role of Eikichi, he's a man that shows by doing, and he's someone that looks a little odd. Being by his father's side, and I could immediately imagine Mr. Matsuda being this way, so I asked him immediately.
Great. Do we have more questions from the audience? Please raise your hand high. I see a hand right here, and then we'll go to the back afterwards. Right here.
Well, first of all, I really enjoyed the film. It gave like a really good, he dealt with the theme of life and death really well by giving us comedic moments and giving us serious moments. But I really would like to know of how you dealt with the father's death. You kind of gave it like a comedic death, like he died in a comedic way. Why was it that you chose to make him die in a comedic way instead of a serious way?
Father 死ぬことっていうことに関してもう最終的にここだったらいいんじゃないかぐらいのつもりで、死んだことは分かんないから分かんないと思ってむしろ少し結婚式は修の壮大な葬式だという考え方で僕はいたので、最後にそのドタバタで終わるぐらいのなんでしょう、こういうふうにしてほしいんだら面白いのにというかいいのになって思った、ちょっとしたなんかファンタジーのようなこともちょっと考えつつでもそんな誰だってどうなるか分かんないから、そういうことの極端な例でいいんじゃないかと思ってちょっと挑戦的な演出をしました。
So in terms of dealing with death, but to be honest, I didn't really know how to treat it. But that wedding scene, I interpreted it as also Osamu, the father's funeral. It's sort of his last hurrah. So in that sense, I incorporated an element of fantasy as well. So I didn't really know what a wedding/funeral would look like. So I think I took the most extreme experimental example that I could show.
We had a hand in the back. If you'd like to, great.
I have a question to Atchan, and I wonder how it was to act pregnancy, because you're young, and I've never seen you act as someone who's pregnant. So I wonder how hard it was. I wonder if you had any study before you act.
今回でもユカの役の年齢が私と同い年だったので、私の母も24歳の時に、妊娠してるのかな、お姉ちゃんを、妊娠していたので、なんかこうもう現実的にも普通にあり得ることなんだなっていうのを妊婦さんの役をいただいた時にこうふと考えたんですけど、今回の役に関しては沖田監督が実際奥さんが妊娠されてる時に沖田さんが客観的に見てたなんかこう可愛らしい妊婦像みたいなのをすごくたくさん教えてくれたので、そのスパイスがかなり盛り込まれているので、勉強するっていうよりかはなんかこう前向きななんかこうなんですか、妊婦像みたいなのをすごく教えてもらったので、教えてもらいながら楽しく自分も想像しながら演じることができましたね。
So in the film, the Yuka, actually her age and my age are quite similar. And my own mother, when she was 24, was pregnant with my older sister. So in that sense, when I read about Yuka, the fact that she was pregnant felt very realistic and natural to me. And also, Director Okita also sort of reflected a lot of how his wife was when she was pregnant, this very sweet portrayal of a pregnant woman, his wife. So I think that added a lot of spices and hints to my role. So rather than studying, I think I just really enjoyed imagining what that sort of pregnancy would be like.
Great. Do we have any more questions from the audience? I see a hand raised high over here.
Yeah, I was just wondering if both of you could speak a little about what it was like filming on location and working with the community that actually lives in that town, and to what degree the residents of the island community or the coastal community participated in the film.
ですね、僕でいいんですかね、僕本当に、東京 京からかなり離れた場所がロケ地なので、東京から俳優さんとかを連れていくわけにもいかないので、現地の人にいろんなことをお願いしてるんですけども、僕ではなくて演出部、いわゆるアシスタントで、演出の方が1ヶ月ぐらい前からずっとその島にいて、いろんな人に映画の話をしてすごく仲良くなってもらって、それでこの役にはこのおばあちゃんが合いそうだとか、この役はこの人がいいだろうとか、もはやもうなんでしょうね、プロダクションみたいなことになってるんで島のプロダクションみたいなことになってまして、なんかそういう人たちに、いろいろお願いしてみんなで盛り上げてっていうのがなんでしょう、とても皆さん楽しんでやってくださったんで、特に映画に出るなんてみんなわーわー言いながら楽しくやって、はい、結婚式の時にリクライニングで上がってくるおじいちゃんとかは本当に100歳の人でなんかそういう人たちとかいろんな人が映画に参加してくれて、逆に大丈夫なのかなと思ってたんですけど何かことがあったらと思ってでもあとはその吹奏楽部の子たちはセリフのない俳優さんもいるんですけど、基本的にはみんな地元の子たちなので、本当に俳優さんではないリアルなスイス中学校の吹奏楽部の子たちのシーンとして作れたので、とてもそれは気に入ってます。
So the location was actually quite far from Tokyo, so I couldn't very well send all the actors that I needed to the island, so I had to ask a lot of the local people. And a little before the shooting began, the casting director and assistant director actually went to the island and tried to blend in with the community and become friendly with the local people, and they would pick out, well, this old lady would be great for this role and so on. So we sort of set up an island production committee of sorts, and I think a lot of them, I think many of them, it helped that they had fun, and it was, of course, for them, it was the first time being in a movie, so I think everybody had a lot of fun, and I think you saw the old man in a reclining chair, that last wedding scene. He was actually 100 years old, so in that sense I was quite worried about employing him that way. And also the brass band was composed of local kids, and so they were not actors, so I'm very fond of the fact that I was able to have this very realistic portrayal of high school kids.
Excellent. We have time for one more question before we get to the party, and I see the first hand is right here.
監督あっちゃん、今日はありがとうございました。20ドルでこんな素晴らしい機会があるのでお得だと思います。ありがとうございました。ちょっと質問がですね、セリフが全体的に短かったかなと僕には感じたんですね。で、ただその短いセリフはより多くを語ってたかなと思ってまして、いろんな背景とか表情とかですね、音楽とかそういった微妙なところだと思うんですけども、なんかその辺で、撮るあるいは、演じるにあたって気をつけたことってありますか？
So it occurred to me that the dialogue in the film seemed to be quite short. It seemed to tell a lot by saying very little. So it conveyed a lot with the scenery and music and these nonverbal communications. So I just wanted to know how you approach that in your acting.
はい。ありがとうございます。セリフでも自分で台本を書いてもいるんですけども。基本的には僕もあんまり長いセリフは書かないようになんとなく心がけているところはあって、少しのセリフで伝わればもうそれでいいんじゃないかな、俳優さんもやりやすいしってもう、あとは分かる、なんかその時のノリでいろいろ変わったりもするだろうしあるなと思って、できるだけ最小限に伝わる形でセリフが書けたらいいなと思ってやってます。なので短いんだと思います。
Well, I write my own screenplays, and I always try not to write very long dialogues. I think it's best to communicate with as short dialogue as possible, and I think it's also easier on the actor as well. So I try to keep it as minimal as possible. So that's probably the reason why it's so short.
And I said that was the last question, but I thought I saw one more hand up over here. If we could make this the last question, if you could bring the microphone over here.
面白い映画をありがとうございます。キャスティング私もすごい好きで、主役の方たちをはじめ、個人的に吹奏楽部のクラリネットの子がすごい好きだったので、さっきほとんど素人的ですごいびっくりしたんですけれども、監督がその演技指導をする時に結構細かく指導されていたのか、それともアドリブ結構入れてらっしゃったのか、で前田さんも監督と一緒に仕事をしてどういうふうに感じたのかお聞きできればと思います。
So I love the casting, especially the kid that played the clarinet in the brass band, the clarinet player in the brass band. And I was wondering if when the director, when he directs, is he very detailed in his directing, or do you use a lot of improvisation? And Ms. Maeda, how was it like working with the director?
残念ながらクラリネットの子は数少ない俳優でして。
Actually was one of the few actors that I used. いやいや、彼女は大変だったと思いますけど。I'm sure she had a lot of difficulties too.
そうですね。あとまあ基本的にはいつも現場で違うんですけども、なんかモヒカン故郷に帰るっていう映画は方言も絡みもあったんで、なるだけそのに縛られないような形でできたらいいなっていうところで。基本的には台本通りにやってるんですけども、何かしらそこで面白いことを拾っていってもいいんじゃないかなっていうような流れでやったので、割と自由だったような気もしないでもないんですけど、はい、どうでしたかね。
So it really depends on the set for me, but for this particular film, we also had to deal with the Hiroshima dialect. So, but I didn't want that to restrain us. So I tried to generally stick true to this, remain true to the script, but at the same time, we would pick up on something that interests us or moves us in that particular moment.
そうですね、監督はなんだろう、なんか。それぞれ俳優さんから出てくるものをすごく楽しんで演出してくれるので、みんなが監督が笑うのがすごく嬉しくって、なんだろう、一番のなんかこうお客さんでいてくれたというか、なんか違う方向に行っても、あ、そっちもあるんですねってすごい広い心を持って受け入れてくれる監督なので、本当に素敵な、はい、なんだろう、言い方をしてくださるので、楽しかったですね、とっても撮影が。
So Director Okita, I think he's someone that really invites and accepts things that naturally flow out of us actors. And he's always our #1 audience, and it's just a pleasure trying to make him laugh on set. And even when an actor or myself goes into unexpected directions, he will always accept that with an open heart. So he's such a wonderful presence, and I had so much fun working on this film.
Great, well I think that's a good note to end on.